Well, hi there. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at costs, and there's two lectures about costs. This is the first one where we're going to be looking at some of the basic measures of costs that we're going to be using when we draw a firm graph. So those four are marginal cost, which we've talked a little bit already about in a previous video where we learned marginal cost and marginal revenue and the profit maximizing rule. And then we're going to learn three average costs, and they all start with A because that stands for average. Let's talk marginal cost. The first idea here is just the definition, change in total cost over the change in output. So it's kind of a rate of change type of problem. So it's equal to the change in total cost over the change in total product is another way that we could say that. And here I put in bold how to maximize profit. That's what this one's for. It's going to be kind of a J shape, and we're going to draw a bigger version of it here in just a minute. If it helps you to practice, you can kind of draw it off to the side. It looks like a J or a little bit like a Nike swoosh, if you want to call it that. So it goes down and then back up again. And the reason why that it initially goes down is the workers start to specialize, as we know from doing our simulation. And what that does is it increases their productivity. As a result, the marginal cost of each unit starts to fall. So you added a worker, but you got a whole lot more marginal product. That makes the individual units cost falling. Eventually, though, there's diminishing marginal returns to the labor input as you begin to add more workers, but you have a fixed number of capital inputs, scissors, stapler, that kind of stuff. That's going to cause the product per unit cost, that idea of the marginal cost, to rise. The other three measures of costs are, as I said, averages. And we're going to start here with the average total cost because it's kind of the biggest of the three. Average total cost is just a total cost divided by the quantity of output. Notice that it's not a rate of change. It's just the total over the total product. And that's going to be basically the formula for all three of these averages. The average total cost is going to be used at a specific quantity, like say quantity 22. You'd be able to compare what the average cost of a unit is to the price that you sold it and know whether you're earning a profit or a loss. So for example, at the unit 22, if that's the number of units that we're producing, maybe the average cost of that unit was 58 cents. If the price of that unit was 65 cents, well, then we're making a profit, right? We're actually making an 8-cent profit on that unit and all the units before them. So it can allow us to tell profit per unit if we compare it to ATC and price. And we can actually use that if we multiplied it by the quantity to determine the whole amount of profit. So again, here we're determining how much profit or loss if we are operating. MC has to go through the ATC at ATC's minimum point. And we'd say ATC has this kind of U shape or V shape. And just so we have an idea of what that's going to look like, it'll be like ATC does one of these, and then right through that minimum point of the ATC, the marginal cost curve is actually going to go up and through there. And that's the idea here that, like, think of your GPA, right? And your GPA would be like your average total cost. That's your grade point average. But the marginal grades that you get, maybe the next semester's A that you get in economics, will raise that GPA. And as a result, it kind of bends it upwards. That would be the true case if the additional grade that you got was higher than the average. Now, in the first range of this kind of ATC curve, it's declining because we're actually spreading out fixed cost and we're benefiting from specialization of labor. But as marginal cost starts to rise, it's going to be the additional units that we're producing. And so as this additional is coming up, the moment that it crosses through that ATC, it's actually going to cause the average to start coming up. Whenever the marginal cost is below the average, it's going to cause the average to pull down because it's like every additional unit is lower than what the average was. So the next two are, let me focus this just a shade. The next two are actually going to be kind of if we add them together, we can actually find the average total cost is what I was trying to say here. So we're going to note that the average fixed cost that I'm about to talk about and the average variable cost that I'll talk about in a moment, if we add them together, that actually equals the average total cost. So we could say, like, if AVC was 50 cents and AFC was 25, then we know ATC equals 75 cents. And that's the idea that we know that variable cost plus fixed cost is equal to the total. And so these averages also have to total up to being the total amount. The average fixed cost is our fixed cost over the total product. Just as we said total cost over total product here, this is just fixed cost. This allows us to determine if the firm shuts down. Say, for example, business is really slow and they want to close down for the afternoon or something. How much money are they going to lose? Well, they're going to lose their fixed cost because they're not paying any variable costs. So the only thing they lose is their fixed. if we were to multiply any quantity times the average fixed cost, we can find out what that fixed cost is. And so it's a tool that we could use if we know the firm is going to temporarily shut down, that we can figure out how much their fixed cost and their losses would be. It's going to be kind of L-shaped. So it's kind of a downward sloping line a little bit. And so it's going to do one of those, woo, right? And if that would be this case, that because as the quantity is increasing, you're just spreading out the total, that fixed cost over more and more units. And so eventually this average fixed cost will become an asymptote with that x-axis horizontally. Realistically, average fixed cost is not particularly used that much, and then we don't actually even graph it, because in just a moment I'm going to show you in another video what that would actually look like without actually having to put the line on there. Average variable cost is going to be just the variable cost over the total product. And this is going to tell us whether the firm should operate in a loss. And this is kind of a confusing concept. The idea here is business really, really slow and the business should like close the doors and be like, nah, we're closed for the day? Or is it just enough to kind of pay for the fixed costs and maybe a little bit of the cost of the workers who are showing up that day? And for the most part, there are businesses that do operate in losses. If you think about restaurants, you go into a restaurant at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's going to be pretty slow. And at the same time, they're still going to be open. That's because they're able to cover all their fixed costs and maybe a little bit of their variable costs. And they're better off operating than if they actually close their doors. I know that sounds like it's like, what? We're going to look at that later in another video when we come back and we talk about this idea of the shutdown rule. And so in a later part of this course, we're going to examine the shutdown rule. But basically the idea is if the price gets really low, right? If the price is below the AVC, then we would say the firm should shut down. And the AVC is actually going to be below the ATC, and it's going to be actually a U-shape just like the AVC. And so we're going to have the same kind of pattern with a marginal cost curve. And we'll have like an AVC that does one of those. So it looks almost exactly the same. But what we're going to find is eventually that ATC, we're going to stick it right above it. And so if we say if the price was really low, if it was like down here below the AVC, the firm should shut down. If the firm is able to price above that AVC, then actually they should operate. And if the price is above the ATC, as we already learned, then they're actually earning a profit. So there's a couple of conditions that we're going to look at here in the next practice set that will hopefully help you with kind of clarifying what those kind of look like. Again, it's going to initially decline due to specialization of labor and then rise again because of diminishing marginal returns. Really, these kind of three right here have very similar ideas: marginal cost, average variable, and average total. Average fixed is the odd one out because it's really just spreading the fixed cost over more units and reducing that average. That's also playing a role here in the average cost curve declining. Now, in the second part of this video, we're going to take a look at what these numbers look like and their relationships among them using this table. And so in different parts of this table, I've kind of filled in different pieces. We can actually fill in everything on this table with just the information that we've been given here. And so the first part to recognize is that at total product 0, the total cost is equal to the fixed cost. And so we have no variable cost at that point, but we would say the fixed cost is equal to 12, right? And we can kind of know that because, again, at 0 total product, we know we don't have any variable cost. So if that's true, fixed cost is 12, then for the first unit of product and our variable cost is 4 for that unit, well, then we know our total cost must be 16. And the rate of change between the variable cost and the total cost, that is to say the additional cost associated with the first unit, is actually our marginal cost here. And so that's going to be $4. The average total cost is just taking that total cost and dividing it by the total product. So that's going to be 16 over 1. That's 16. And the average variable cost is the same idea, 4 over 1. In the second row here, we're given the marginal cost, and so we have to work backward a little bit. If we know that 0 to 4 gives us a marginal cost of 4, then 4 to something should give us a marginal cost of 3, and that something would be 7. We also know that's true for the total cost as well, because it's the rate of change in total cost over the change in total product that gives us marginal cost. So again, if that's 3 here, because our marginal cost is 3, then this must be 3 as well. And we could verify that by kind of reversing these numbers. $9.50 times 2 should actually give us $19. $3.50 times 2 should give us $7. So there's actually 2 ways we can find those numbers. Here again, we have another rate of change of $2, so this one's going to be 9 and 2, and then now let's do our total cost. 21 over 3 is 7. Average variable cost here, 9 over 3 is 3. And now let's go on to the total product number 4. For this one, our rate of change from 9 to 12, well, that's just 3. And that makes this one 24. Our average total cost then, 24 over 4 is 6. And 12 over 4 is 3. So here we're kind of bottoming out our average variable cost at about 3. We haven't yet reached our minimum, possibly. We might here in the next unit or two, or it might be 6 here for average total cost. And then here we've actually already reached our minimum of marginal cost, which should make sense, right? We should have a situation where, like this, the minimum point of our marginal cost curve would probably come before the minimum point of our AVC, which would also probably come before the minimum point of our ATC, right? So we kind of thinking about these minimums and where they should arrive in terms of the total products. This one arrived at total product 3. AVC arrived at around 3 or 4, right? So we'll say kind of 3, 4. Not 3/4, but 3 and 4 were actually where that kind of minimum is. So it's more like flattened out a little bit. And then ATC, we don't know yet, right? We're going to keep working. So this last one, we really have to work backwards from. 360 is our variable cost for 5. So 5 times 360, well, that's 15 plus 5 times 60. And 5 times 60 cents is $3. So that's $18. So $18 should be our variable cost, which gives us a rate of change there of 6, right? So the additional cost there was 6. That means this one's got to be 30 because, again, it's the same change between total cost and variable cost. And now we can figure out what our average total is. 30 over 5 is 6. So here we've actually reached kind of this one at about 4 or 5. That one also kind of has a flattened out looking shape to it as well. And we've got this kind of situation where marginal cost comes up and comes through the bottom of our AVC and our ATC. So it's a little bit different from how we kind of drew them conventionally, but that is still behaving as we would expect, with marginal cost being this kind of Nike swoosh and then flattened out kind of U-shaped AVC and ATC above it. Let's keep working backwards here again. $9 is the marginal cost. That means this one's got to be 27 and this one's got to be 39. The average total, 39 over 6. Oh my goodness, I'm having a brain fart. So we got, how many times does 6 go into 30? That's 5. 6 goes into that. So 650 question mark. I don't have my calculator on me. I should probably have that. Here we go. Got to bust out my old calculator. It's too early in the morning for this stuff, Gloss. 650. I got it right. Woo, yay. Okay, so I'm going to scratch that one out. A little embarrassed there. Average variable cost, 27 over 6. Well, 27 divided by 3 is 9, so that has to be 450. And that's in between these values, which is also kind of helpful that, like, I know, well, it's got to be at least 360 and no more than 529. 49 over 7, oh my gosh, that one's much easier. So now we've got 10 as our rate of change for this one, so this one has to be 37. And that means this is 10. And again, I'm just double checking. 49 over 7 is 7 as the average total cost. Here we've got a marginal cost value of 12, 37 to 49. It is 12. Great. I did that math right. And then 12 plus 49 is 61. And now we're almost to the end here. 61 to 75 is 14. So that's our marginal cost. And then 49 plus 14 is 63. And we'll find that 63 over 9 is 7. And then the last row, and last but not least, this is not as bad as it looks, right? Our average is here 10 times 90, $9.10. So that's 91. And then 10 times $77.90 is 79. And so that means, what's our rate of change there? 16, and that is also 16, so 16. So all of these numbers kind of relate to one another, and I hope that by being able to do this table and seeing the relationships among them, that'll help you when you get to these multiple choice questions about costs. Later in the next video, we're going to practice drawing them and practice more of these relationships. I'll see you next time.